Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a disassembly and maintenance video as well as some first impressions for you of this little guy right here. This is the Spyderco Knives Pochi. So, elephant in the room, this knife has doggy style, right? This is a knife that looks a lot like a dog. And that is kind of its shtick. Whether this is actually a good pocket knife for your everyday life, that remains to be seen. But at the very least, it has a, shall we say, an absolutely unique style. A couple of things that are on my mind here as I begin the disassembly process. First one, Detent. Not very good. This guy has a very weak Detent. It can get out there, but not super well. If you put a little wrist in it, it absolutely deploys reliably, but that's just not great. This is probably because it's maybe they're trying to make it done with the spider hole, but in that case, having the paw on there becomes purely aesthetic. Suppose this would be a pocket paw. So I'd like to see maybe whether some lubrication, etc., can make this guy run a little bit better. Other major thing I'd like to highlight is the tail, or at least this part in the back here. The thing that makes me kind of curious about this guy is that it's actually done a little bit better than I expected. I figured this would just be a metal piece flopping around that could hit the blade very easily, but it appears that there is some kind of a stop involved here that prevents this guy from going any further than this or any further than this, such that this guy is, and by the way, then it kind of, anyways, I'm trying to figure out what exactly is stopping this guy, but I haven't been able to externally, so I'm curious about those things as I take this guy apart. In terms of overall approach, it is a Tai Chung Spyderco. It is dead freaking centered on, and let's go on ahead and take it apart. And by the way, this big old guy on the back here, this is an over-travel stop. If you're curious, that's what we got there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try and take this guy apart from the front side here, from the show side, see if that works. Looking like T8, maybe even T9. No, that's T8. All right, let's go ahead and loosen that up. That was easy enough. All right, so we got the pivot out, and then we have to get the other screw, which is T6. T6. All right. One thing that's worth noting is that they have matched this texture on both sides of the thing, but, you know, hey, whatever. And let's pop this out. Not free spinning. That's nice. Okay. And it looks like the knife is coming apart in our hands. There is an internal stop pin. That's how that freaking thing works. Okay, cool. So, oh, and this is on bearings. I thought this was running on washers because the action was so slow, but this is a bearing knife. So it must just be that the detent is that weak. Okay, so a couple of things to note. First off, they're using phosphor bronze washers that have been specially carved out for this stop pin to sit in them in the Pochi here. So that's kind of cool. The tail of it is using PB. So, and the fact that it has this little pin inside there, which is rotating within this little crescent here, that is how this guy is able to stop stop and start in the right position as we're doing this. So I'll make sure that gets lubricated up. Otherwise, looks like a titanium frame lock. Looks like we've got a probably stainless steel washer in there on both sides of the titanium. We've got the typical Spyderco bearings. We have an internal stop pin here. And aside from that, we do have a detent ramp ground into there. Aside from that, though, pretty straightforward Tai Chung Spyderco construction here. All right. Let's go on ahead and pop this guy. Well, not pop this guy apart. Let's go ahead and clean this guy up. That's the phrasing. Nice. This guy just arrived. This is one of those cases, by the way, for full disclosure, this was sent to me by Spyderco directly, so best quality controlled one of these ever, although, I don't know, with that detent, I'm starting to wonder whether it might not be. And Spyderco has not been a company, for what it's worth, that has felt like they're sending me manicured samples, so to speak. I have not gotten the impression from Spyderco that they are, that they're, you know, going through the ones they're sending carefully, as I have had some troubles in the past with some of the ones. Like I've gotten, what's an example of this? I think my Tenacious Lightweight was off-center out of the box, which you'd think would be something they would address if they were going to be grooming the samples carefully, so to speak. But nonetheless, that doesn't confirm or deny anything. That's just it's just something I got to say, right? So let's pop this guy. Let's not pop anything. Let's Lube the Pivot here. And by the way, if you're curious about this lubrication or any of the tools I'm using, go ahead and check out nickshabazz.com/tools. And we will go on ahead and you will be able to see everything that I'm planning to use. Okay. This seems to be working fine. The pivot's definitely wanting to come loose. This guy is running dry, bone freaking dry, which is making me hope, perhaps, just perhaps, that we are looking at a lubrication issue rather than as much of a detent issue. We will see, but yeah, then I'll go ahead and I'll put a little lubrication right there as well. I have just over-lubricated this knife considerably, but what would the world be if I did not do that? Some things, no matter how crazy the world may get, some things remain the same. And my deep, abiding love of over-lubrication, I suspect, is one of those things. This is a weird knife, in case you haven't noticed, in case you are blind, deaf, and perhaps have never seen a dog before, or a knife for that matter. This is an unusual piece. And the question for me in evaluating a piece like this is always, okay, well, that's interesting. It's different, and so you get a little bonus pointage for being different, that's for sure. But the question is it different good or different bad, right? I mean, technically, well, I can think of a lot of things that are different. People do, for that matter. In fact, okay, I'm a guy disassembling a knife for a YouTube channel wearing a Batman mask right now. I think different is a fair descriptor there as well. But, okay, let's go ahead and reseat this guy, making sure to align the washers. But the question is whether it's compellingly different or whether it's just sort of, well, you did that. There you go. Oh, I'll go ahead and lubricate the detent ball. There we go. Easy peasy. And put this back together. So that's going to be the reason I'm carrying this guy. And in fact, I predict to you that this guy will get a little bit more carry time than usual. The reason I say that is just because, honestly, I want to make sure okay, the Spyderco McBee is the one that jumps immediately to mind. This is a smaller knife, as was the McBee. It was a weird knife. First getting that out of the box, my first impression was just like, why? And then after a while, after using it, after carrying it, I got it. I figured out the ergonomic, basically the way to hold it that made a lot of sense, right? And then suddenly it was like, oh, this is actually pretty compelling. I can see recommending this to somebody. The question I have here is, am I going to have a similar experience? The downside to this guy, and, you know, I'm getting into my first impressions here, but we're almost done, so might as well. But the biggest downside that the biggest liability, frankly, that this guy has is that detent. That is just unfortunate. And in fact, now I've over-tightened it a little bit. So let's back that off. Just a hair. Centering is dead on. Okay. Running a little bit better. Oh, that little tip is pokey, shall we say. Not poachy, but pokey. The tail is now running beautifully, which is wagging beautifully, I suppose, is the technical term. Let's go ahead and check for blade play. So every damn part of this thing is strange. I'm going to back the pivot off a little bit, see if that helps. Nah. You are going to need to use some wrist, basically no matter what, to deploy this knife, at least this current sample of it. I haven't handled other ones. I'd be very curious, by the way, if you are a commenter and you have been to a cutlery store or you bought one of these guys for yourself. I'm very curious to hear your experience with it detent-wise, but that is sort of the turd in this guy's punch bowl, right? Maybe it'll break in, but I am sort of suspicious that it will not. And so, you know, aside from that, Ms. Lincoln, how was the play? But no, I mean, aside from that, the big question is just whether there is a compelling practicality to it or whether it's going to be something you buy only because it is cute. And indeed, it is cute. And so going formally to the first impressions here, you've got yourself a little tiny knife here. I mean, the size of it is minuscule. I put this guy up next to you, Spyderco Delica. Yeah, this thing is tiny. I mean, the entire knife damn near fits within the Delica handle there. Fold it up and oof. Yeah, this thing is small. Absolutely not large. The blade steel on it is S45 VN, which is actually the first example of S45 I've had on the channel, which I'll be interested to see how that performs. Is it smoothing out, or am I just crazy? It actually is getting a little easier. I think maybe the lube's working its way through. The detent is still too weak, 100%. They did not do that right. And this is, Spyderco's Taichung factory has a long history of not doing that right, unfortunately. But nevertheless, my first impressions, though, the blade on it is pretty slicey. They come down to an absurdly little thin edge right here, which is very good. The ergonomics on it are okay. The advantage of the tail, by the way, it's not just cosmetic, is that it gives you an extra finger worth of grip. As you're holding this guy, at least with my relatively small hands, this guy gives me a little bit of extra hold in there, which I very much do appreciate. And so, I feel like I can control the knife a little bit better by virtue of that tail, rather than when I tuck the, tuck tail, so to speak. It's still there, but I'm definitely relying more on a grip with my thumb than I am in this situation with the tail out. That's kind of a smart little idea. In terms of pocket carry, what did I do there? I think I was just holding it wrong. In terms of pocket carry, one of the other big concerns I have is if you take a look at this guy right here, underneath the pocket clip, there is this area of scalloping, right? And if I put this guy into my pocket, and this is, by the way, a very, very nice coin pocket knife, what I've noticed is that this guy, these little areas grab onto that. I mean, Spyderco is actually, and that's kind of surprising to me, honestly. Spyderco is usually a company that is very good about putting a surface, for instance, the little Spyderco logo here, area on which the clip can glide. They have not done that here. They have a textured surface directly under the clip. So that's not particularly good either. Honestly, I don't know. I'm going to carry it because it is so weird. I feel like I need to give this guy a little bit more time just because I'm really not sure what's going on with it. Maybe it's compelling in a way I haven't yet found, and I want to give things that are unusual a chance to grow on me. Right? But nonetheless, my initial first impressions are not super positive. Between the detent here and between the clip issue, those were a couple of things that are themselves not great. So, anyways, but like I said, it's nicely made. It's beautifully scented. The grind on this guy, is that hollow? It sure looks like a very low hollow grind here on a relatively thin blade stock. I can see it being interesting to some folks, but in terms of replacing your PM2, I don't necessarily know that the Pochi is going to be what you're after. So there we go. I hope this has been interesting to you, and have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.